Hi everyone, it's Dr. Domingo. I wanted to welcome you to the session on academic writing from wherever you're watching. I hope you've had a good residency so far. And so in this session, we'll look at the basics of academic writing and why it's so important, especially in the dissertation process. So one of the things I wanted to start off with is share this neat little cartoon that I saw from this comic. If you're not subscribed to it, I highly encourage you to. It's called PhD Comics. And this is song lyrics written to the tune of Adele's Hello. And you'll see on there, I love the chorus, hello from your empty draft, at least put in some fancy graphs. And tell them I'm sorry, it's going to be late, but it shouldn't matter clearly, you'll procrastinate. So just think of Adele singing these lyrics, hello, it's your draft. Anyway, so I thought it's a fun way to start our session on academic writing. So here's what we're going to do in this session. We are going to first explain what is academic writing, what's critical thinking, and what does Bloom's taxonomy have to do with it. The next thing is we'll look at the specific skills of being doctorate level writers and scholars, and then some practical writing tips, certain things like cutting words out, and then some final question and answer. So I'll leave some time after the end of this session to have a round of questions with your facilitator. So here we go. So what is academic writing? The first thing, I love this quote, good writing is clear thinking made visible. Academic writing is clear, formal language. There's no slang. Ain't no slang in academic writing. It's clear, it's precise, it has evidence from other experts, which means it relies on references. It's not necessarily just opinion, or it's not opinion. It's evidence from other experts talking about the research. It addresses a specific question, meaning that it's focused. Academic writing is also logically structured. There's a format to academic writing that you'll see. It's organized. It has a flow, if you will. And finally, it's grammatically correct. Obviously, the periods, the punctuation marks, the semicolons, colons, parentheses, all that grammatically correct. That's academic writing. A little more about it. It's abstract in thought, but it's also clear in tone. And what do I mean by that? Academic topics focus on ideas and concepts. So it's not enough just to talk about economics and the practical side of that, but why, the what, the harder questions, the higher level questions, conceptual questions. Tone, what that refers to, is the precision of the language used. Again, it's very precise. The precision of language that's used to describe the idea or the concept that you're trying to write about. It's importantly supported by the research. It's based on critical thinking, and I'll talk about what that means here. Because what is critical thinking? Critical thinking is the ability to engage in reflective and independent thinking. This is something when you start writing academic papers, you want to start thinking about some of the meta or the other higher level questions. I love this quote from Aristotle. It is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. So what does that mean? It means questioning ideas and assumptions. It means to identify, to analyze, and to solve problems systematically. It also looks at assessing relationships between claims and the evidence given. Critical thinking means openness to new ideas and appropriate skepticism. So I mentioned Bloom's taxonomy earlier, and Bloom's taxonomy was created in the mid-50s by an educational psychologist named Benjamin Bloom. And he wanted to promote higher levels of thinking and education, things like to analyze, to synthesize, rather than just remembering facts. So it's one thing to write about facts, but yet it's another to talk about themes and patterns, to differentiate arguments. You'll see on this slide that's presented a wheel. And I use this wheel a lot because it's a great reminder that Bloom's taxonomy isn't just about knowing facts, but what do those facts do? They help you acquire comprehension about the subject matter. Well, once you have comprehension, apply it. What does it mean to apply it in a context? Once you've applied it, let's analyze that concept. So break it down into its component parts. Once you've analyzed it, maybe you can start putting ideas together and synthesizing themes. And then once you've done that, you start evaluating, was the quality of the themes that I synthesized worthy according to the research? So it's really circular more so than it is, and I know some of you education folks have seen Bloom's taxonomy in a pyramid type scale. I like this because it's circular. It keeps on reminding us that this whole conversation builds upon itself. So you'll see on the top half of the circle, the higher level thinking, the skills in analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. We'll talk about those specifically here in this presentation. Then at the bottom of the wheel, the lower half, the lower level thinking, which is the knowledge, the comprehension, and application. They all work together, but what we want to focus on is the top half. So the question again, this is great to know about critical thinking. Yeah, we know this, we're reminded of this, but what does this really mean for me practically as you're writing the dissertation? So the first step, application. What is application? And some of you have seen this handout before, and so this might be a review for you, but if you haven't, this is very good to start implementing now, even in all your classes that you are taking, to consider integrating these concepts of application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation all throughout your writing. So what is application? It's like paint. You got to apply it. Knowledge is like paint. It does no good until it's applied. What application is, it's selecting main ideas and research findings that relate or directly or indirectly to the topic you're writing about. So how do you do this? Here on this slide, you'll see 3 steps, and they're color-coded for a reason, which will be clear in the next slide. So the first step is you want to provide the context of the article in the book, and it needs to be clear why you chose it. Some students just indiscriminately choose research and articles because, hey, it sounds good and it's kind of close, but really provide a rationale why. Think about why you want to include this evidence in what you're writing about. The second step is you want to identify the specific component and then apply it to the context or situation. So here's an example. I won't read this all out verbatim, but you'll see it's color-coded with a little thing at the top of the slide that says context, identify, and apply. So this is an example from writing. Leaders at XYZ organization are not ready to integrate situational leadership into its culture. That's the context. And then the author, the writer here, identifies in a book discussing the effectiveness of leadership approaches, Northouse suggested, and so forth. And then the writer applies it in the red section. When the leaders of XYZ organization tried this, they realized that, so again, identify the context, provide the rationale first, identify the components, and then apply it. That's what application is. The next level of writing is analysis. An analysis is looking closely at something to identify its components, its component parts, patterns, and themes. I like this picture that you see on the slide. This is in Dubai, and it's a series of islands. So it kind of looks like a palm there. And then if you look to the right of the picture, it looks like a map of the world. Well, it's a group of islands called the world. And it's really interesting. I won't go into this, but those are all man-made islands in the water. And you can buy a house in there. Never been there, but it sounds really cool. One day I'd like to see it. In any case, looking closely at something to identify component parts, patterns, and themes. Patterns and themes are going to be very important. So researchers, they can analyze data. Scholars can analyze an article by breaking it up into smaller parts. Consultants, business leaders can do a SWOT analysis. That's a very common type of analysis that's done. How do you do analysis? Well, first you want to share the overall context of the article or book, just like before, cite your source, and remember to give a rationale why you selected this source. Okay, then you're going to break it down into component parts. What does each part of this bigger idea break out to be? And then you want to apply the parts that are relevant to the position. So it's similar to application, except you're breaking down the bigger idea into smaller parts. Here's an example. Again, this is from writing. The writer says, leaders at XYZ organization. You remember that? That's the context. And then, if you notice toward the end of the black section, the author says, Lindbaum, 2007, which actually should be a little more recent, but anyway, listed 4 characteristics of coaching. And then the beauty of this analysis is that the writer broke it down into parts, part A, B, C, and D. So remember, break it down into parts and then apply this. Apply what those parts are in the situation. That's good analysis. All right, so let's go on to the next type of skill you want in academic writing, and that's synthesis. Synthesis is pretty easy to put in an image. It's integrating and combining ideas into a new whole so that these original ideas don't become just 2 ideas combined together. It's a whole new thing. So in this picture, red plus yellow equals orange. It's not rello or red, or sorry, yed, but it's orange. It's a whole different kind of color. Okay, so researchers can synthesize ideas together. They can synthesize them in a thematic review. Consultants can create a customized model from different models and have this whole new model. Scholars can develop a position that's based on the works of several researchers. So, if you have different research ideas, you combine them, that's a whole new research idea. How do you do this? Well, here's how. Pretty simple. From the first source, break down the parts, which is analysis. Remember that? Give the context, give the rationale why. And then the second step, do that for the second source, or third and fourth and so on. But from the second resource, break down the parts, just like you did the first. So you're doing 2 separate things. And then the third is you combine them. You put them together into a whole different idea and apply it. Share how it applies. So this is a bit longer, this example, but again, break down, and then combine. You'll see that in the first section, in an article on the determinants of a coaching culture, the authors listed 5 areas, A, B, C, D, E, etc. And then the second one is in an article, another article, about developing a coaching culture through teams. It's a whole different idea. The other author does this. And really, here's a giveaway in the red, combining these attributes of a coaching culture. So again, the writer combined 1 and 2 to get 3. That's synthesis. Now, here's some tips on synthesis. Is you have to remember the synthesis should be writing that's based on themes rather than source articles. What this means is that you want to use the main points from the articles all throughout the paper. Don't just sequentially present the articles. I've seen too many students just do, hey, here's one article, here's one article, here's one article, or here's one research idea, another research idea, and another research idea. That's great, but what does that all mean? Are there themes that are common throughout that can be tied together into this new idea? Okay, so that's a good tip for synthesis. And finally, evaluation. Evaluation is very common, especially in education, because instructors use rubrics, for example. What evaluation is making a judgment, making some determination about the quality of a position or an idea based on criteria. And that's the key word. It's based on objectively defined criteria. Otherwise, it's just opinion. So let me show you how that's done. Again, provide the context of the overall position, just like you did in all the other ones, but then specify, the next step is you want to specify the criteria. Well, this is great context, but here's the criteria that we're going to use. The third step is then you want to judge the situation or make a determination based on the criteria. Again, it refers to the criteria. Again, a little bit longer example, I won't read it, but you'll see that the context was set up in the black section, the employee being coached may be experiencing this type of scenario. And then the writer talks about research here, and then the criteria is In the last year, in the blue section, supervisors at the organization have noticed that one employee is declining attendance, and goes on to talk a little bit about the criteria and then the conclusion, the judgment, the decision. Given these observations, the set-to-fail syndrome appears to be occurring. So again, why does he say that? It's because he said, given these observations, those observations were the criteria. All right, here's some other tips on evaluation. You want to go beyond just using the sources to make a point. If you can bring in other cases to support your point, even better. A good thing in evaluation is you want to present all sides of the argument. Present multiple sides. So here's the criteria, and here's the decision. If the criteria were a whole different construct, the decision would be this. So again, it's referring to the criteria and how the situation would apply if the criteria were used. Again, everything is based on the criteria and the objectively identified things that the writer talks about. Okay, great information about application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. How do you write this stuff? Those are still conceptual, but how do you actually do this? So this next section talks about effective writing and just some tips. So the first thing, I have this in red on you'll see on your slide. It's this word, this phrase, cut, cut, cut. Learn to part with your words. Someone once said to me, words are not people, so please cut them. They do not bleed. It's okay to cut. Here's some just practical tips here. On the left side of the column, you'll see a clunky phrase, and on the right side, this equivalent or better phrase. So instead of saying all three of the, it's easier just to say the three. Instead of saying fewer a number, just say fewer. Going down, in close proximity to, well, just use the word near. I see this a lot. In order to conduct the research, well, why not simplify it? Just say to. Cutting down phrases. Another one that I see is wordiness. Wordiness is really interesting because people like to think academic writing is full of verbosity and elocution and to demonstrate one's erudition. I just said that it's a lot of wordiness there. Well, again, instead of saying in spite of the fact that, simplify it. Say although. In the event that this situation will occur, just use if. This one I see sometimes. According to these new innovations, well, all innovations are new, so just take the word new out and just call it innovations. What about these are one and the same? Easier just to say the same. Shorter and longer in length. Shorter, longer is fine. Wordiness. Cut, cut, cut. Words do not bleed. Okay, another writing tip is this verb to be. And if you're a math major, you go back to your math classes, you see this image. To be, or, that's the Venn diagram, the or, that little u, and then the bar over the other to be means not. This is in formulaic writing. It's to be or not to be. Thought I'd throw that in. Anyway, there's many students who like writing. There are many students who like writing. Well, simplify it. It's easier just to say many students like writing. The other thing is watch out for what we call the weasel words. Weasel words are the things that try to convince you because it sounds academic. So here's an example. We can't go on using up the Earth's resources at this rate and expect mankind to survive as a civilized species beyond the 21st century. Okay, here's a weasel part. This much is obviously, without a doubt, clearly evident. Well, all that stuff at the end, you don't need. Obviously, without a doubt, clearly evident. Watch out for those type of phrases, those type of words that try to push you and convince you. Again, academic writing is clear, precise, factual. One can say it's dry. Evidence, evidence, evidence. Be careful with your opinions because everything is an opinion unless it's backed by evidence. So in academic writing, here I give some examples. Pride and Prejudice is a great piece of literature. According to what? I personally think Pride and Prejudice and Zombies is a great piece of literature, but that's beside the point. Coral reefs have degraded since Europeans introduced farming along the tropical coastline. Well, that's factual, but yet, how do you know that it's the Europeans that did that? How do you know it's even farming along the tropical coastline? Based on what evidence? Business has a responsibility only to its shareholders. Well, sure, it has that responsibility, but it has a lot of other responsibilities too. From whose perspective? Have this saying here: it's fine to trust, but always verify. Give evidence for what you're saying. Hidden assumptions are an extension of this. And this is a quote from former President Ronald Reagan, who said, "If you women should stay at home, maybe we could solve America's unemployment problems." Well, this was given back in the 80s, and he was talking about unemployment. At the time, there were 12 million unemployed Americans. And so there's some hidden assumptions in the statement. Here are some of them. All women could have men to support them. Women are taking jobs away from men. Really? Women don't really need jobs since they can stay at home. Wow. Men want and will take women's jobs and pay. It's another hidden assumption. Finally, work for all women is a kind of indulgence allowed by their men. Wow. Those are some assumptions in that statement that, maybe it was benign, I don't know, but when you're trying to communicate through academic writing, you can make no assumptions. Make sure that you describe and explain everything. Someone once told me you should assume nothing but explain everything. Parallelism is a grammatical concept that I see a lot of in writing. So let me give you an example. This is not parallel. You see this on the slide. If you want to be a good doctor, you should study hard, critically think about the medical literature, and you should be a good listener. Well, that sounds good, but that's not parallel. What parallelism does, it ensures there's consistency in the tone and the voice. So here's a better example. If you want to be a good doctor, you should study hard, listen well, and think critically about the medical literature. Imperative, imperative, imperative. Study hard, listen well, think critically. Here's another example. Same thing. If you want to be a good doctor, you must be a good student, a good listener, and a critical thinker about the medical literature. These are three nouns. A good student, a good listener, a critical thinker. Three nouns. Be sure the parallelism is consistent. Wordiness. I mentioned this a little bit, but here's an example. You may often find, that there are a number of words contained in your writing that can be safely eliminated without any kind of danger to your meaning whatsoever. That sounds eloquent, but it's not academic writing. Cut it out. Here's an easier and more precise and succinct way to say it. You may find words that can be eliminated without any danger to your meaning. It's the exact same thing, succinct to the point. Misrepresentation. This one's subtle, and I see this often. I just made this example up, but the room was painted blue because the sky is blue. That's what Domingo 2016 said. No. The actual writing should be Domingo 2016 said that the sky is blue. That's factual. The room was painted blue to look like the sky. So the author didn't say the room needs to be painted blue because the sky is blue. No, the author said that the sky is blue. That's it. Didn't say anything about painting the room. Didn't say anything about wanting to look like the sky. Just said that the sky is blue. Misrepresentation. So what this means is you have to look at your research article and distill what the main idea is from there. Finally, this thing called anthropomorphism. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Yes, I still watch them. Anthropomorphism is attaching human qualities or attributes to non-human things. So, The article discussed, well, articles don't discuss, they're inanimate objects. The scholar discussed is better to say. Here's another one, and I find this a lot. Research has found that. Research is this lazy way of saying, you know, it's out there in the literature, but I don't want to look up who actually said it. Research has found that. No, don't say that. It's better to say researchers have found. So it's the human that found, not the research that found it. Okay, that's anthropomorphism. Very common. So in summary, here's what we talked about. Academic writing, if you remember, it's clear, it's evidence-based, it's precise, and it's logical. Bloom's taxonomy, the higher order skills of application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation should be evident in your writing. In fact, start writing now. I know in some of my classes, I have 3 assignments, and each assignment focuses on a certain component. I have an analysis assignment, I have a synthesis or construct something, and then I have a evaluation type assignment. So I want to make sure that all types of writing is covered. All types of writing are covered, in my classes at least. The way to develop clear writing is more writing. So again, it's not something you develop overnight, but these are some tips that I want you to consider and think about. Other than that, I hope you've got some practical skills that you can start implementing even tonight. So, hope you have a great day, and look forward to seeing you sometime soon. And I'll leave this time for questions by your facilitator. Thanks for watching.